People want to quit on their relationships, quit on their marriages, quit their job, or quit their purpose. There's a whole list of things that you just want to quit on. But it's like, no, God is saying, no, this is not quitting season. I don't know that there ever is a quitting season, but this one definitely isn't quitting time.
I saw that the other night. Dallas Cowboys, they just quit. He just quit, man. That was awesome. They got demolished.
Hello, everyone. We are back with the You Asked For It podcast, and that's what we're doing. You guys asked for it, so we are here with extra episodes. And my name is Melissa. I will be your host, and I have with me Hal Mayer.
How you guys doing?
Daryl Black.
Hello.
And Craig Altman.
All right, good to be here. And Melissa, I guess you're on because Will Jackson is now off.
Yes.
Yeah. And we love Will. He's still part of Grace, but I don't know. He left for more money or something. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah, you did your money message, and
then he just jumped ship.
He left.
Yeah. No, we love Will, and but
Yes.
actually, it's good to have you here. I know you can do a great job.
Thank you. I'm excited. And it was a great message to come off of. I'm glad. I feel like we got, a little bit of a not as controversial topic to talk about without Will being here. So
Grit.
I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah. We had a heavy 4 weeks with one thing after another, which were all good and necessary because as a church, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about those issues. And so the feedback from you guys has been amazing that
Very
we are
good.
talking about this stuff. And I've even had people come up to me and say, man, I'm sending it to my family and friends in other states and even in other countries that they've been sending it to. So this is great that we've even addressed this topic. So
It's funny you say that. We have some unchurched relatives that live in Arizona, and all of a sudden they want to start listening. And it's a whole cool story about it, but Debbie didn't want them to start with that series. Like, man, they're kind of new to everything, but it's funny how they resonated with the series. 'Cause I think a lot of people have these conservative views, even if it's not biblically based, but they really feel that way, but they've been so afraid
to say it. And that's the culture that we've lived in, that truth is optional.
Yeah.
And so people are afraid to say what's right.
Right, because if you don't believe in my truth, you hate me.
Exactly.
And that's the hard part.
That's the hard part.
And the way you set up that 1 week is how we need to come across of anything. It's unconditional love and uncompromising truth. I mean, if we can use that filter, then people can say you hate, but man, the best thing you can do for someone is tell them the truth. I mean, like for me, if I really loved you, Hal, and you had a booger in your nose,
please tell them.
I would tell you about it.
Please tell them.
Now, the rest of the
But if
time,
I
I'm going to
go
be
this
thinking
home-
about it.
but really, seriously, if I really loved you, because if I didn't, I'd just let you walk around all day.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a friend.
Yeah.
A friend, what's it, the deceitful are the kisses of an enemy?
Yes.
Faithful are the wounds of a friend. I know we're kind of off subject, but that's part of it. So talk about grit a little bit, Daryl.
Yeah, this message, came on time because it wasn't just me preaching to other people. I was preaching to me too. And so when we got into this series, we say we're going to talk about grit. I immediately jumped to, God brought to my mind James 1. It's like, don't quit. This isn't the season of quitting. Yeah. And I've been in seasons of quit, and I've quit before. And there's a lot of things I mentioned in the message. I said, sometimes there's good reasons to quit. Like you feel like, man, I feel overwhelmed. I feel stuck. I feel like the outcome has already been determined. So you don't even want to do it. Or you feel like the effort to stay isn't worth the reward of staying isn't worth the effort to stay. Yeah. So it's like there's all this stuff going on. So yeah, I've been in those seasons where you go, man, I just want to give up. In the year and some change that I've been here, I've been through some stuff. You go, should I keep doing this?
Right.
Because this doesn't feel good. But God was encouraging me, and I wanted to encourage our church and people because I know I'm not the only one that's feeling this way. And I get the emails and I have the conversations where people want to quit on their relationships, quit on their marriages, quit their job, or quit their purpose. There's a whole list of things that you just want to quit on. But it's like, no, God is saying, no, this is not quitting season. I don't know that there ever is a quitting season, but this one definitely isn't quitting time.
I saw that the other night. Dallas Cowboys, they just quit. He just quit, man. That was awesome. They got demolished.
Anyway,
let's stay back.
And that's the Dallas Cowboys is my favorite childhood team.
No way.
Yes, man.
Well,
You fell for that whole America's team ploy.
I did. It was, it was the age of Rice and Smith, and I grew up But anyway.
But we recommend that you go watch Don't Quit, Pastor Daryl's message alongside this podcast, right? Because getting caught up on what he shared
Context,
the context is super important. So you can watch that on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you stream.
Yeah. You know, I think I love when you said we've all felt like quitting.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think there's a person that's honest, no matter how much faith we've had or believing in God, that you hit a difficult moment and you get overwhelmed and you want to quit. And that's one reason I think it's so important that you have community. You know, men need men. Man, where you can kind of pour it out in the room and a guy can say, man, don't quit, help pick you up, encourage you. You know, that iron sharpens iron. And so, man, to do life alone, it's a lot easier to quit. But if you have people in community you're with, it's just going to help you to take that one more day, that one more step. No matter what you're going through, man, don't do it alone, man.
Right, especially as men, because sometimes we need encouragement. Sometimes we just need to be told the truth.
Yeah, or
we need
kick in the
both.
butt.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because it's funny because people are like, why do you speak so directly at men? I'm like, because if for myself, if I don't think you're speaking directly to me, I'm assuming it's for somebody else. Like, we have to be told, no, this is for you. You need to do this because we just will float sometimes or just find a way out of it. And I think one of the biggest reasons we tend to give up is when you're going through it, it's really hard to have an accurate depiction of the reward on the other side.
Yeah.
It's very hard to see what's on the other side because anybody that's gone through marriage troubles, in the middle of it, they don't see what's on the other side. Very rarely. Like,
I feel like it's going to last forever.
Right.
Yeah.
You feel like it's going to last forever and you don't see something better. Like I still, my wife and I, we've told our story, but when we went through our toughest years of marriage, and we've shared this, Chrissy went through childhood sexual abuse, all these things, and it all of a sudden came out in our marriage, and there's a lot of pushing away. There's a lot of things going on. In the middle of that, I could not have even given you a glimpse of what it would be right now. And I couldn't see it. And in fact, I'm sticking through it because I believe that's what I was supposed to. But there was no accurate depiction of what the reward would be on the other side. And I tell people right now that are going through it, I said, everything happens in seasons. And so the reason we continue on is we believe, God says, hey, you will reap a harvest when it comes time. And so I tell people that are going through it, I said, I couldn't see it either. Like, I understand where you're at. I understand where you're at. I understand what you're going through. But there is a reward on the other side. God promises us that. What it looks like, we're not going to be able to understand. But I think that's the hardest part. Because I see the reward of quitting right now.
Yes.
There's a really sweet reward of quitting right now.
And it seems like the easy way out, but it actually makes things a lot worse a lot of times. I love the verse in Galatians 6 that says, do not grow weary in doing what's right. For in due time, that's the point, due time, at the appointed season, you will reap if you don't faint. I wonder how many people have missed it by just not waiting long enough. They quit and they miss the blessing. I can't tell how many people quit on their marriage and they go, as they get married the second time, they go, I wish I would have worked on the first one because I have the same set of problems. We're both sinners, broken, that need God's grace. I mean, really, I'm not trying to be harsh on it, but you miss out by giving up too quickly.
And you'll never know. One of the things I say in the message, the problem with quitting is that you'll never know what you missed.
Right.
If you quit, you'll never know what God has for you or what it could have been if you let go. And there was something that you said, which leads back to something that you said, is you need community. We need community because you need to see something different sometimes. And it's your faith is only increased by experience or education. And sometimes that education is being around other people and listening to someone's story. I mean, my wife and I, we've gone out with people and been in the community groups, and we thought we were doing bad until we sat with some other people. And then you're like, oh, we're
doing better than we thought.
You're like, high five.
And while that might seem crazy, but like that was encouragement to go, oh, we can get through this.
Right.
Oh, we're better off than we think. We just need to talk and we need to do this. And it actually made us grateful for our marriage in some of those seasons that we thought were really tough. Because when you're by yourself, you think you're the only one going through
That's
it.
the enemy.
Sure.
You're the only one.
Yeah,
that's what
no,
he says.
no one else could have
Isolation.
ever been through this problem before. And then you sit at a table with other people and you go, "Oh, so you don't put the dishes in the sink either." Oh, so it's not a me problem. It's a universal issue. And this is how you deal with. Oh, so now I can see, and I get to see it every Thursday when we do our couples ministry. I get to see couples
Home builders, man. If you're around Tampa, come
be a
to it.
part of that. I get to see, excuse me, I get to see couples meeting with other couples to go, wow, I didn't know. Man, I just needed to hear that thing and it inspired us. I just needed to hear another couple go, yes, this is how we're doing it. And it helped us through it. And so
What are some of the tools you guys, times where you felt like giving up, things you think would help people go, here's some things that helped me to push through not giving up? We mentioned one, community.
Yeah.
What would be some other ones you could think of?
Well, I mean, for me, I've told people this before, counseling. Look, and I'm not, it's always interesting to talk about counseling because I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm not saying that every situation requires counseling. I will say this, community keeps you out of counseling. I've told people that before. I said, don't see community as the answer to everything, but it does keep you from getting so far that you need another person to come in. But for us in my marriage where we were at, without counseling, we would not have made it.
Yeah.
Because we needed someone who had the ability to look into the past and help make sense of it, help bring out the lies, bring out all those things. And so, but it's a tough thing. I'll say this, I'm a pastor and there's a part of me going, man, I'm really afraid she's going to bring up something that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. That's good.
It's true.
Yeah.
So
For
there's
me,
that fear.
Yeah, for me is if you have some kind of record of what God did before.
Yeah,
I go,
that's good.
okay, wait, what did God do before? Where I felt like, and looking at his faithfulness from the past, looking back can really encourage your faith. It does. Sometimes, you know, I think David, there's a song where he talks about remembering the victories. And I think that that's important, you know, that you can look back and see this looked really bad too, but God got me through it.
yeah.
What would you say, Daryl? Anything?
I think both of those kind of lean into what I was being intentional.
Yeah.
Like be intentional. Some of the practical things, and we didn't mean to make this about marriages or couples, but some of the practical things that me and my wife have used is go, hey, what's the real problem? You're not the problem and I'm not the problem. The problem is the problem.
Right.
So let's just write down what the problem is and let's be intentional about addressing the problem because it's not us, it's the thing. And so how do we do the thing? How do we fix the thing? Because I like you.
Yeah.
And I love you and I want this thing to grow. And so that's important. And I think the other part is gratefulness. It is, what are you grateful for? I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day and she goes, I don't like life. And she's just saying, I don't like life. And I said, what do you mean you don't like life? And she said, well, I don't like that I have to do this and this and this. I said, but tell me what you do like. Just give me 3 things you do like. She's like, I like volleyball. I said, okay. She's like, I like hanging out with my friends. I like going to church for worship, and I like doing music. I said, cool. I said, that's life too. So life isn't just this one bubble of things. It's those things too. What are you grateful for? And it's easy when you're going through trauma, you're going through stuff to only look at the bad stuff without going, hey, what am I grateful for? This is good too.
Yeah.
And so, which is why the Bible spends so much time saying, hey, you got to think on these things.
Yep.
What's good? What's just? What's of a good report? Because we can be negative real fast.
Yeah.
It's easy for us to be negative. It's easy for us to point out the bad and the critical things, but go, what are you grateful for? So even in my marriage, man, what am I grateful for? What are we doing well? And even in life, like I even think about the story of when Peter walks on water. And I think not that I would have done any better. I probably would have sank too. But I think at one point you got to go, yeah, there's wind and there's waves, but dude, I'm walking on water. Right. Like that's what I'm grateful for. It doesn't matter what else is going on. I'm walking on water. Right. And so we could spend more time being grateful for what we have. We'd spend less time concentrating on what's negative.
And really renewing your mind is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Man, that's a tool.
Changing your attitude.
Listen, man, our mind, if it's not renewed, stinking thinking, that'll lead to a stinking living.
Stinking thinking.
And but we all can get there. We all can get there. And because we become a victim
We do.
of the circumstance. And I don't see that in the New Testament. You know, Paul says to be a good soldier. I mean, Paul says basically have some grit, love those who persecute you. I mean, there's some tough things, but if we can toughen it out, if we can take those steps, knowing it's hard, you develop that faith muscle. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
and you're going to come out like it says in James 1. Consider it pure joy when you go through suffering and trials. This is Paul, who was beaten, left for dead. I mean, there were some hard things to do, but man, if we can, and we forget that we have the presence of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
He says, you know, Jesus said, you're going to have trouble in this world, but take heart, I've overcome the world.
Yeah.
A few chapters later, he gives us the Holy Spirit.
Right.
We got to tap into a strength that we don't have sometimes.
Yeah.
Because we can't do it in our own strength. And that's pulling aside time to pray. I know it sounds but no, to pray and renew your mind with God's word. Melissa, you're going to...
So good. Yeah. I was chatting with a friend recently, and she was just kind of unloading as friends do. And she was going through some real stuff like kids, marriage, husband, heavy stuff. And I don't know if I was just, there's no advice, right? There's no wisdom. So she's kind of unloading, and I just go, wow, your prayer life must be really awesome right now. she I didn't even really remember that I said it, but she brings it up all the time. She's like, every time I think about unloading, I just think about, should I unload to a friend, or should I go get on my knees and bring it to God and talk about it that way? But
Cast all your burdens on him. You know, he really does care. You know, it gives you a perspective too. I think when you're in the middle of it, man, somehow you got to pull away, withdraw, and go, wait a minute, this is.
And it's one of those things too. I do. I think we should always unload on God before we unload on anybody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because He's going to give us perspective. And a lot of times when we do it and we just say it out loud, we go, "Oh, that's dumb. I shouldn't. I shouldn't think that."
Right.
Because I do. I think what's even tough, even for Christians nowadays, is just as society has bought into it, there's this idea that if I just do these certain things, then my entire life will be perfect, and I can have this. And even you'll hear people even like Christianese it and say, well, if you just do what God called you, you'll always be healthy and wealthy and all these things. I'm like, that's not possible. And so we have to stay close to God, but we also have to stay close with other people, because it's when we're on our own and the only influences we have in our life are from the outside, people that we don't know. That's when our thoughts go off the wrong way. I always tell people, who are the weirdest people? It's the ones that don't talk to other people. Like if somebody is up in a mountain for 10 years and they come down, you're not expecting wisdom. You're expecting crazy, but we do that today. We do that now. With our ability not to go outside, not to have relationships, is we start to believe the lies. And that's exactly where the enemy wants us.
Yeah.
He wants us believing those lies. Yeah. And it's so easy to do. And even as a parent, you got to walk through these things. I mean, it's the same with every kid. Why do I have to do these chores? My life is horrible. No, it's not. No. And I have a hard time, like, even as a parent, I think my dad said the same thing. Like, you don't know what I went through. But it's just like that idea of like, no, your life, it's part of life when you walk through this stuff.
Yeah. And I'd love to ask you guys about Count It All Joy, because I think that is a place where people wear their burden, sometimes as a badge of pride. You know, I get to carry this, but woe is me. But that's different than Count It All Joy. So I'd love to hear you guys chat about that, and really how do we do that?
Yeah, well, first of all, James, if you read the last part, the reason he says you count all joy because there's a good outcome. Yeah. It's the maturing of your faith. And he says the reason you can have joy is not, you don't have joy in the situation necessarily. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm going through this. But he says, but in the middle of this, if you'll persevere, there's going to be some fruit, some maturity, and it's on the other side of it. So that's the part I see on it. It's like, I don't know, like working out weights, the first few times you do it, you're really sore. You're not real joyful. You feel the soreness of your muscles, but over time, you begin to see the fruit of the adversity, right? Yeah, it's the resisting that builds, resistance builds muscles, same thing. And so there can be an expectation. Yeah. I don't know. That's what I feel.
No, that's right. I mean, and we have to be careful how we look at the perspectively counted it all joy, because we live in the culture that finds unity in misery. It's like, oh, you're depressed, I'm depressed. You sad, I'm sad. So we've created entire communities out of trauma.
Sounds like a depressing group.
It is, man. Yeah. And so, and with no sunny outlook, no hope. It's just like, let's just sit around and be sad together.
Yeah.
And that's not what James is saying. James is, as he said, James is saying, man, this is coming to me because God is doing something for me and through me. I don't know what it's going to look like at the end.
Right.
But man, he's doing something. And like I think me and my wife often talk about the story of Job. It's her favorite book of the Bible. And we can look at Job with different eyes because we know the end.
Right.
But Job doesn't know the end when he's going through, when he loses all his family in one day, when he loses all his money and livestock in a matter of hours, his health. Yeah. He loses all this. Right. And so he doesn't know what's happening. But even in the middle of that, and Job goes through he goes through the emotional roller coaster. But he spends a lot of that time going, yeah, God, but you're good though. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he has moments of questions. I think, I even grew up in a culture of churches like, don't question God. Don't ever ask God. You don't question the Lord. It's like, no, you can ask. You got to be respectful. Because even Job at one point was like, God, what you doing? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now God spent the next 7 chapters going, it ain't none of your business. Right. He's like, where were you when I made the stars? Where were you when I did all these things? And so eventually Job goes, I get it. This is not even about me. This is for you. So for you I live, for you I die. And eventually, we know the end of that story. But I think for a lot of us, the Bible deals in no extremes, so it lets us know, wow, if Job went through this and God had something on the other side, then God is going to have something for me if I'm willing to submit to the process. If you just keep going to the gym and looking at the weights, you're going to leave the same way you came in. So you've got to submit to the process. That means you've got to go through the pain points. You've got to be stressed out. You got to sweat. You got to have someone coaching you going, come on, one more. Come on, you can do it. Mm-hmm. Come on, keep going. That's come on. Yeah. And so you got to go through all that. And that's the same thing. God and the Holy Spirit in you is saying, nope, you can get through this. And you got to listen to that and let him walk you through that process. And so I would tell people, counting it all joy is knowing that God has better for you. No matter how bad it looks, he has better for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even going back to what you said, I think some people, their identity was formed in their pain. And so it is who they are. Everything in their life always goes back to it. But I went through this, or this has happened. And what they're not understanding is I think what happens a lot of times is you get people that pay attention to you because of that. You get people that feel bad for you. Oh, yeah. What we don't understand is that's not where you're supposed to stay. It's great that you've admitted it, but God has something better on the other side. Like God's goal is never for you to sit in the pain and the bitterness your entire life. Like he wants to bring you out on the other side, but we live in a society right now where it's almost as though it is your badge of honor of who you are. I saw something the other day on social media that said best friendships are formed over hating the same things. And I'm like, that's where we are right now in life is the idea that more of our friendships are formed off of the negative than the positive of what happens and what comes into your life. And so I think it's easy sometimes when we talk about just stopping in the middle of our bitterness and going, this is where I'm at. It's never going to get any better.
There's something to this. I mean, I think when trouble comes, I've always said there's 3 types of trouble. Mm-hmm. And this will help people know how to respond to it. Three types of trouble. One is the trouble I caused, my own poor decisions put me in the situation I'm in. The second type of trouble is the one that, man, as far as I know, I'm doing everything good, but I don't know why this is happening. That's maybe that part where, okay, God, I'm going to have to trust you. And then the third part, Satan sent some trouble. Yeah. So if we know which one it is and can discern that, our response is different. I mean, really, I've known times where this is the enemy, and I've just said, you know what, this is you, and I rebuke that, and I really would go to a place of fighting against him. Other times, it's my own dumb decisions. I kind of have to repent and humble myself and go, that was really stupid, dumb. The reason there's trouble in this relationship is because of me, and I need to go and humble myself. And the ones where it's God, those are ones you're just pressing through going, oh, God, I'm just going to be faithful to you and trust it in the middle of this. You're going to show me the way out. So we got to know where it's coming from sometimes too.
I think the trouble that we do is probably the hardest one to admit or to get out of because we don't want to admit that we are the one that created the problem. It's like, why is my finances not working right? Well, have you seen your closet? You seen the car you're driving? Because you're living
Right.
outside of your means.
good.
God is doing this to me. No, you're doing this to you.
And I think people probably ask, how do I know where the trouble's coming from? Which one of those three?
Yeah.
I think you guys already shared the answer with community.
Right.
Is probably a big one that you can go to and have those conversations.
People can
if
see what you don't see.
Yep.
And
they
be
see your
honest
blind
with
spots.
yourself. Be honest with yourself.
Right.
Like, just listen. You're not broke because the Lord made you broke. You broke because you haven't budgeted.
Yeah.
You got a bad financial plan or no financial plan at all. That's why you're in some of the situations. Because there's an old kind of a joke that these old preachers used to say that one day Jesus comes and the devil is sitting on the curb with a sad face. And Jesus says, "Why are you sitting over here looking sad?" And the devil goes, "Because everybody keep blaming everything on me." It's like everything ain't the devil.
Right.
Everything ain't God. Some stuff you did that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've got to take responsibility for, no, I did that. I broke that relationship. I messed up that finance. I did that whatever. That's on me. And you got to be the one to go back and fix it.
Yeah.
So,
And the good news is, all three ways, God says, I can still work it for good.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Joseph's brothers betrayed him, rejected him, and he said, what you meant for evil, God meant for the saving of a nation. God is bigger than the sins of man against you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's powerful that what God can overcome anything.
Yep.
And I do think it's what you said, honesty, such a big part. Because I know people that like, well, I had accountability. I'm like, but were you honest with your accountability?
Yes.
But were you honest with the people around you, or are you telling a story? Because if you don't have honesty, then there's no real truth that's going to be coming out of it. And that's it's hard. It's hard because we would rather want it to be somebody else's fault than admit that we did the stupid thing.
Melissa, your generation, because it's a different generation.
Yep.
I'm 65. Our generation came through a lot of hardship, and I feel like the grit, the resiliency seems to be a little bit. I'm not trying to stereotype. How do you feel about your generation? It just, to me, sometimes I feel like the littlest things just have such a big effect. I mean, please speak to me. Why is that, or is that true? Or I'm not trying to pick on you guys out
No.
there, but how do we help them see this is just part of life sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in my generation, and I hope people can see that from a point of, we're generalizing, but it's true in a lot of cases, more than not, right? And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of slang or concepts perpetuated by social media, like trauma bonding. Really, we were talking about it before, like.
Yeah.
We both went through something, now let's be best friends over it, or I'm triggered, right? Or I'm offended, or all of these things that are, kind of curated on social media in a fake world.
Yeah.
I just think the people that are coming through this generation that are strong in their faith and pursuing what you guys have pursued in your life, I don't think that they feel those ways.
That's good.
Right? I think that there is a group within this generation that is different and thinks differently and is making a ripple impact on the young people in society today. So I'm very hopeful
Yeah, that's good.
for my generation. And I think there's so many people that are saying, hey, we see what the norm looks like online and we don't want anything to do with it.
I don't know how people deal with life without having the anchor of believing in the sovereignty of God, the almighty powerfulness of God, how much we know God cares and loves. I mean, to me, those are anchors that no matter what I'm going through, I know He's for me, not against me. And how people can walk through difficult stuff with this, I can do it. Man, I don't know, man. I need a greater power and strength and perspective.
And I would say that, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at addiction in our society now. There's more things to be addicted to than any other time. And we can focus on drugs, but we forget about all the other things, like the entertainment, the pornography, all those different things. And then depression is at a rate much higher than it's ever been before. And so I think it's when we look at it, I don't think people are dealing well with it. And that's the problem is once you lose that anchor, then what are you holding on to? Like, what are you putting your faith in? And I think it's incredibly tough to do. And I would say this, even with the younger generation, I think one of the easiest things to do is to blame the older generation. One of the hardest things to do is to look for someone that you admire in the older generation and have a hard conversation and go, what am I not seeing? Like, be honest with me. Where do I just need to suck it up?
Yeah.
Because I've had conversations with young adults before. I'm going, no, that is an area where you need to go do something else. Like, that's okay. Like that is a closed door, but this right here is not. Like, God's asking you to step forward. You still have things to learn. You have still things to go forward in. Yeah. But that's the thing is, and I think what's one of the enemy's greatest tactics is I'm gonna take you away from the wisdom of the people that have gone before you. And that's why I think even with Grace, like being a multi-generational church is so important, because the younger generation needs the older generation.
Yes,
not to look at them and make fun of them.
No. And we need them too,
right,
obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the younger generation, it's easier to just go, oh, boomers, and say that than it is to go, maybe there's something I need to hear, because they have. And it's the same thing when you have kids. I am almost 5 times my son's age, yet he questions me on things. And I'm like, what?
That's because you're his dad.
What
you have to.
What? But that's what happens. It's so much easier to go, you don't understand what I'm going through, than it is to go, maybe there's some wisdom. Actually, there is some wisdom that I need to receive in this time.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to be in community, in group with multi-generations, because it becomes incestual, for lack of a better word. Your mindset is swapped with people of the same mindset. Yeah. You're not elevating. Yeah. And I think when you look at the microwave-ness of our generation and how quick everything has come to us in life, and what your generation had to go through in different ways, that the grit was formed, and I think in every area of your life where, there wasn't, I could press a button and watch 7 hours of television when I was a kid, and it just kind of lessens the, stick-to-itiveness. You used so many good made-up words this weekend in your message, Pastor Daryl. The unquittability-ness and the grit and perseverance that goes with it. I think there's the microwave-ness hurt some people in this generation, for sure.
Yeah, because there's always that ability to have happiness for a moment.
Yeah.
Or to have that release that I feel like I've accomplished something. Because that's what's funny. People realize that, like, the reason people watch entire seasons of something is not necessarily that they like it. There's a sense of it's a weird thing. There's a sense of accomplishment.
The endorphins.
There's an endorphin rush that it goes into your brain. You feel like you accomplished something. Now, did you? No. But that's easier to do than it is to stick with this or like fight for a relationship. Yeah. And I'll say, we can go in even this for a second, but we've talked about it, and I've dealt with it being in youth ministry for a long period of time, just parents and students and kids. Like, that's it. Look, it's not easy, but I think one of even the mindsets that we've got to change is parenting is not a 18-year deal. And this.
No, it is not.
It's not. And like the goal can't be to just have a good 18-year-old. Yeah. Like I remember when my dad said, he goes, you're not going to understand this, but I'm parenting you to be a godly 35-year-old. Like, I don't know what that means. Wow. But because his goal was not to get me to 18 and be like, my dad's 6'5", big dude. Yeah. Could have beat me into submission at any point. Like, that's an easy thing for him to do. But he's like, that's not my goal. My goal is for you to find a love for God. My goal is for you to be a good husband, spouse, all those things. And so you've got to figure out how to parent through that. But also the idea of, I'm not giving up at this moment, even though I don't understand anything about them. Yeah. That's why I always love middle school, because that's the moment that most parents realize their kids are not going to be president. And they look at them, they're like, oh, wow. But it's such an easy time because they're going through so much to just go, I don't understand this. I'm going to take a step back. And it's not that you need to understand it, but you got to take a step in. I'll say this, parents, one of the best things you can do is get your kids around other adults that believe the same thing as you, in youth ministries and those things, to help back you up in those times. Yep. Like grit, it's another one of those things. So many times I would have parents come to me, 2 months left to go in their seniors, their kids' last year of high school. Can you fix them before they go to college? Like,
sure, in 8 weeks.
What? Yeah. No, look, but the thing is, for so long, it's like it had to get to a certain point before you ask for help. It's the same thing with community in our lives. Community in your kid's life keeps you from having to get to that point. Not that you can control everything your kid does, but the goal is also for not them to never mess up. The goal is how are they going to respond to that mess and go forward. Like grit is across all I think that's the hardest part with grit is relationships.
Mm-hmm. It's relationships.
Because if it's just me, I can handle that. But when I have to also take into effect how other people are responding, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. It's hard to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, and to help to keep that in focus, it's just, for me, just while you were talking, grit is part of that definition is grit is loving God and obeying God beyond your understanding of what he's doing.
Yes.
I'm going to do it even when I don't get it, because it's not supposed to always make sense. Yeah. I have to have grit when I'm raising my daughter, because she doesn't recognize that what I'm doing is for her benefit. And so she doesn't. I'm trying to mature you and make you full and a complete 30-year-old, not just a 16-year-old. So I'm doing things for you that you don't like, that don't feel good, and I'm okay that you don't like them. But I still have to commit to doing them every day. And as a parent, there are days you go, I don't want to do this no more. I don't want to do this. I'm sick of looking at you. I don't want to keep saying the same thing. But you keep going because, man, I see the bigger picture.
Right.
It's bigger than this moment, because one day you will be 30, you will be 40, you will be whatever that is. And I want you to look back on this and say, this is what Daddy was doing.
You know, parents need more grit these days.
Yeah.
I see a lot of compromise, afraid, trying to be their friend. I mean, of course, you want to have a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
But that grit part of saying, you know, I know what you don't know, and you're going to have to trust me here. I mean, there's some real battles that take place, but parents, have a little more grit when you see your kids maybe, you know, wrong direction, bad choices. You've got to come in. You're there to guide, guard, and govern them. And and I hope we'd have some parents with more grit. You know, I think about when you say grit, to trust God when you can't see. Yeah. Man, the Bible, Old Testament stories are so amazing about that. You want to be inspired? Go read the story of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, falsely accused of rape. And he went from place to place. And every time he went to this new circumstance, it said the Lord was with him. Yeah. And he continued to love God. Yeah. He continued, and he didn't have a bitter spirit. Because when he
didn't wallow in misery.
And when he finally got free, his brothers came for grain. He could have said, I'm done with you guys. But he said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. He had a perspective beyond the bad things that were happening to him. The story of Noah building the ark, 100 years. Come on, Abraham waiting 25 years to get pregnant. His wife was good. All these stories talk about not giving up even when we don't see, you know, the light or the door even opening. There are just amazing stories in the Bible. Read the Bible to inspire you. Not to give up.
It will. I mean, and one of the amazing things of being in ministry for the length that I have been now is seeing kids who went through it who are now following after God because their parents stayed with it. And like that's the thing we don't see enough of a lot of times is you go, oh man, I would never have thought that. But I mean, the Bible says teach them in this way and they'll come back to it. Now that's not something you want to see. You don't want them to have to come back. You just want them to stay. But I mean, no, I don't think any parent has ever had their kid do exactly what they wanted them to do, which is frustrating. But it's something that when you trust in what God's called you to do, it allows you to make those decisions. But it's tough to do. It's tough to do.
You said it, Galatians 6:9. Hey, don't get weary in doing good, because in the proper time you will receive the reward of harvest. Just keep doing good, and don't give up. We may not always know when the harvest is coming, but we do know that it is coming. So just don't give up.
Amen.
Don't give up.
And when you're tired, have someone else around you can hold your arms up, man.
Yes.
Don't do this alone, man.
Have an Aaron and her.
Connected, man. Get in a group. Find your tribe. Find your team. And, All right.
That's awesome. So at what point do your parents stop parenting you? Because I'm still being parented heavily by my parents, and I am so grateful for it. I call my mom. I'm like, you can't believe what, God. It was a God trouble. I'm like, God had this thing happen the other day. She was like, honey, I think you did that to yourself. And I was like, oh man, Mom, you're so right. So it continues on.
It continues
on.
It
continues on.
I mean, it's different relationship.
Yeah.
Now you can only suggest.
Right.
But we need to still bring counsel, and that's going to be up to them, how they receive it. I think sometimes we all can have a tendency to be even too controlling with our adult kids. You're not there yet, but we're learning what the balance is, and they still need that advice, that wisdom, that mentoring.
Right.
And I'll say that. I think one of the least talked about areas, which I see parents have struggled with the most, is when the kid leaves. Because you lose that ability to just speak, and they have to do it. And so how do you parent adults, kids?
We'll have to do a podcast on that one
tough.
day.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing. I've had more adult, just being in young adult ministry, having conversations with the parents going, I thank you for what you're doing, but how the heck do I do this?
Yeah.
Because it is. It's
I got a couple of them. I'll tell you how to do it. I'm a master at it, guys. I'm a master. That'll be another episode.
All right, deal.
But I tell you what, one of the keys is if they're transparent with you now about a failure and you react in a very wrong way, they're not going to share any of the other failures. So
That's true.
you got to have a lot of grace with your kids and love them through it.
Yep.
You know?
Well, that is tremendous.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts? I mean, this was an amazing extra episode of the You Asked For It podcast. So we appreciate you guys.
If you didn't listen to it, I haven't even seen it. I was out at another church for the weekend preaching, but I heard Daryl really killed it. So you guys need to listen to that message. And then Hal is this week on Grit.
It will.
And then we have our man event.
We do.
I'm not sure if it's sold out, but
It's
Close.
I think it's
you
just
better
about
get
there.
your ticket.
Tony Evans is going to bring it.
Tony Evans and Tony
Dungy,
Dungy.
yeah.
Tony and Tony.
Yes.
Come
We
on,
will
man.
see you there.
That'll be awesome.
It's going to be grit-tastic.
Yes, I like that.
Another made up word.
Another
by
made-up
Pastor.
word.
We're going to get you a lot of t-shirts.
Webster's is rolling over in his grave right now.
That sounds
All
like
right.
something people cook.
Yeah.
I
Hey,
learned that when I moved to Florida.
I like. We normally don't close with prayer, but let's pray for those that feel like giving up.
Yeah.
Daryl, lead us in that prayer. Will you do
Absolutely.
that?
Yes. God, we just thank you for everybody that's listening, everyone that's watching to this, God. I pray that that you give them the courage to persevere, the courage to tap into the spiritual grit, to press on when the journey gets tough, and to find strength in your promises. God, I pray that we remain grateful for who you are and what you continue to do in our lives, God. And God, I also pray that we engage with community, that we realize that we are not in this journey by ourselves, but we have a bunch of people who are willing and want to surround us and hold us up and encourage us and give us wisdom. So, God, I pray for transparency, for vulnerability. And God, I pray that we continue again to lean into your promises for our life. So, again, I say to everybody, don't quit. God bless you.
Amen. Well, we hope this encouraged you and uplifted you today. Thank you for following along with our podcast today.